Hello, beautiful community. Let's think together a little bit about whether projecting benign power abroad can help regenerate democracy at home. So Peter Pomerantsev, who I think virtually all of you know, sent me a piece that he wrote for Coda Story, which is a lovely thing, and my friend David Tulloch has written a couple of pieces there about my health condition, actually, and Peter's a contributing editor. Rather than reading Peter's whole piece, I'm going to violate it a little bit by picking out a point from it. And Peter's a writer, which is to say that he isn't just somebody who writes, he's actually a writer. And that means that even a short piece by him isn't going to be reducible to 2 or 3 analytical propositions we can extract from there. But I'll violate the piece a bit by extracting something from it and exploring it together with you. So let's read a little bit of Peter and then react a little bit. There's a part of me that thought to read the whole piece, but I've got an eye reaction to a heart medication I'm not tolerating. So we'll just read a few extracts with your permission. Giving in to Russian autocracy in Europe is intertwined with giving into autocratic tendencies at home. The outer and the inner are codependent. It's not just us, America. It's not just us, America is leaving. It's leaving a version of itself. It was Anne Applebaum who first pointed out to me that this projection of good power had a transformative impact inside America as well. Imagine, and I'm jumping around here, imagine an alternative history in which America had aligned itself with totalitarian powers in the 20th century, Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union. Or what if the US had just not taken a strong position against them? It may not have copied their systems fully, but it would also have removed part of the impetus for ruling elites to deal with their own autocratic practices. Once America can acknowledge that the drama here is not just about its foreign interests, but also about the battle within America itself, then the field for action becomes bigger. Standing up to corruption, oligarchy, and kleptocracy in Russia is part of standing up to corruption, oligarchy, and kleptocracy in America. Standing up to bullying, hate, and lies in Russia is about standing up to bullying, hate, and lies in America. Standing up to Russia's mafia state turned mafia empire means standing up to the mafia state in America. For those of us who were raised in the provinces of the American project, but now dwell or engage with its core, the aim can't be to simply scrape and beg for security. America made us, and many of us are now literally Americans or integrated into the American conversation. Sometimes those who have come from the periphery see the issues clearer than the capital. And if the center has lost its purpose, then it's up to those who have come from the provinces to help remake it. Now you might say, well, Vlad, you yourself draw a connection between domestic policy, politics, and foreign policy when you say that the West is committed not to Ukraine's victory but to Ukraine's survival, and that the only way it could be committed to Ukraine's victory is if it had a kind of strategic capacity that it doesn't have and can't have given the level of democratic capacity it has, right? So we've got a sort of strategic incapacity secondary to democratic decline. And that's the connection I make. So aren't I therefore bound to think that Peter's idea that you can, to a degree, regenerate democracy by the benign projection of power, as I would say, imperial power abroad in the case of the United States, aren't I just going to react to that as a proposal to pull oneself out of the water by tugging one's hair upwards? And I think that the answer, probably just immediately responding, looks something like this. I think Peter certainly persuades me that there is an analogy between drifting closer toward democracy at home and the projection of benign power abroad. I think Peter persuades me also that that connection by analogy can also be a causal connection. And I think Peter persuades me also that, as a matter of historical fact, that causal connection has been enormously important. And I agree with Peter that that's the case in the middle of the 20th century for the United States. But of course, I don't think that that's a causal connection that's always there. It's a contingent historical question. And the question to be pressed at Peter's piece is, aren't we now in an historical moment in which any significant foreign action is going to increase the disintegration of trust in the domestic polity? Because after all that's needed for the further disintegration of trust is for the technocratic center that holds power in Western countries to just act on a large scale. Because it's the technocratic center that's at a big distance from what many citizens feel, and the US election showed that. And it's also the technocratic center that generated extravagant calamities like expending the kind of sums of money that we can't even conceive of on taking Afghanistan from Al-Qaeda to from the Taliban to the Taliban. So let's make this concrete. Imagine Joe Biden tried really hard and somehow succeeded in closing the skies over Ukraine. Would that strengthen US democracy? Not obviously. Would it weaken US democracy? It'd be more likely to weaken it than to strengthen it, sure. So we're in a historical moment where there is that conflict now. But at this point, I imagine Peter could say, but even if it's true, Vlad, that the projection of benign power undermines democracy, failing to project benign power also undermines democracy, could even undermine it more. But here I would probably say that that's right. But that is exactly right, that we are choosing between one form of undermining democracy and another, and we're comparing between two evils, trying to choose the lesser one. What I would say, however, is that we have to have conversations in our informational space about reimagining the international order. These conversations have to begin somewhere, and they can take very different shapes, right? And it's okay that what Peter might be doing here is inspirational or even invitational, right? Well, who is this realistically going to persuade? Well, you might say it's going to persuade anybody who is seriously prepared to read and listen and think along and reflect, who is committed to living in a better political world, right? So just because I don't think the story causally works right now, doesn't mean that what Peter's putting on the table can't be part of a constructive proposal for reimagining our world. Lots of love.